your participation at the 7th session of the Community-Based Education and Curricula and Basic Education Systems Community Practice. So with that, we can start today's session. So as a friendly reminder of the purpose of why we're all meeting here, why we've all been meeting over the course of the last 7-8 weeks is to develop a strengthened understanding of what works in competency-based learner-centered education in heterogeneous contexts according to practices and data, to develop more policy and practice options in competency-based education, and finally, to develop learning partnerships between policy actors, educators, and researchers within and across countries. So as been mentioned, we've had 6 previous sessions so far. The previous session went over assuring quality and competence-based education through data generation and usage. And for today's session, we'll be focusing on effectively strengthening teachers' capacities in low resource contexts. So also please remember, this is the second last session. So the last session will be happening next week. And with that, we'll just briefly go over the agenda just so participants know what is to be expected. So the TIE team, the Tanzania Institute of Education, will introduce the topic and will pose questions such as what does teacher capacity mean? What are the required capacities of effective teachers in the African context? There will then be a plenary discussion following around this topic. Following that, we will hear about a Tanzania experience on effectively strengthening teachers' capacities in low resource contexts. Then we will have a brief reflection on the Tanzania experience. And then again, we will have a similar discussion led by Dr. Cosmos. Following that, there will be a plenary discussion on effectively strengthening teachers' capacities in low resource contexts. What do we learn and how we can improve as we implement competency-based curricula. We will then break out into breakout rooms and have a 30-minute session where we discuss several questions that will be shared in the chat box during the session. And then we will hear from the breakout rooms. And finally, we will have concluding remarks, and then we will share a survey. And with that, I will hand it over to the TIE team for them to get going. Thanks so much again for joining us today. So if I may ask Dr. Cosmos to join.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you, Gabriel, for the good introduction. And we are now here today for the session 7. And our session 7 is on effective strengthening teachers' capacities in low resource countries. And this is an important area to discuss because we try to find that we need to strengthen our teacher system. We started with the first, which we are looking at the mapping of the competencies, and now we are coming to start into looking at how do we implement these competencies, looking at the teachers as the most important factor when we are looking at strengthening teachers' capacity. We thank you for your participation, and today we will hear also some experiences from Tanzania on how we strengthen the so-called teacher capacities. Before we go on, I think we have some few things that we are looking at. What will be our outcome for this session? And this we are trying to look might be to understand the aspect of teacher capacity, and also to be able to explain how to implement teacher capacity building in countries and all resource context, and also try to explore possibilities to sustain and enhance teacher capacity building programs, which are also important, especially when we are implementing the so-called the CBC. And now what we are going, I will be sharing my screen, but before I share screen, let us try to discuss the two things that we try to see we need them. And I am sharing these questions in the chat box for everyone. And then you can write your response in some 3 minutes. And I will ask Gabriel during this time, maybe you can give us a small music while people are writing. What we are looking at, let us try to see, what does teacher capacity mean? And especially in the context of implementing CBC. At the same time, what are the required capacities so that we have effective teaching in the African context? This is also important that we consider now.
Hello, Dr. Cosmos. I think your screen froze for me. Well, I think he was asking participants to answer some of those questions. And so while we get back to Dr. Cosmos, we'll play some music and hopefully participants will be able to get a chance to answer some of the questions that he had posed. And so we will also paste that in the chat. But yes, all right, thank you.
Hi, Gabriel. I'll post the questions in the chat box for everybody. We seem to have lost Dr. Cosmos. Hopefully he'll come back shortly, but I'll share the questions from the chat box. And we'd like everybody to comment on them in the chat box. So I'll put them in right now.
Thank you, Marianne.
Magic mixtape. Oh my God, oh my God. Hey. Give me your love, give me smile upon your face when you see me. Kiss me, girl, and kiss me. Remember, Munacharo, Omuwaraze Yankubanyo, Netufayo, Ganamuchibu Kawarobe Sanyo, Kawara Kanacharo, Neyakumutima Kunisalo. Magic mixtape representing Buka Chili to the world. Upon your face when you see me, kiss me, girl, and kiss me. Let me take you now, cause your love is a possession. Girl, I
Hi, Dr. Cosmos. I hope you can hear us now.
Hello. I see
Hello.
there is only one response that these are when you are saying teacher capacities. One is saying there's about skills, and someone has responded now is about teacher capacity is one of the most critical issues in CBC. Yes, it is a critical issue, but what is teacher capacity? That is what we are looking at, so that we see it is critical. Yes, but what do we expect as important capacities that we have to build to our teachers? We can continue responding. Ameshakuja. The ability of teacher to effectively implement the curriculum. These are some perceived abilities, skills, and expertise of school leaders, teachers, and faculties and staff. Of course, this is an important item we have to look at. Yes. Capacity of teachers means they have knowledge, skills, and competence required. Yes. Ruben from Malawi says teachers' capacity refer to skills, abilities of teachers. It's important because it helps to make decisions on how best to improve the performance. And there is experience from Marian is giving us teachers' capacity is also their willingness and the ability to build and nurture relationships with the students. That is very important. When the relationship is good, actually we expect to have a good performance. And also the psychosocial relations and emotional intelligence are the most important. Now teachers, we expect them to build this emotional intelligence. Now, while we continue, I now welcome Vincent Katabaro to tell us about teacher experiences in Tanzania. And Stephen will, yes? Now, Stephen, can you start sharing your experience?
Okay, let me share it.
Yes, you can share your screen.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yeah, I cannot share my screen while
Yes,
you are
yes,
sharing.
you will use my screen. Now you can continue from here. You are welcome.
I expected to close your screen so that I can share mine.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to share because yours was already been shared.
I think you are not
cannot
allowed to
share
share.
my-
We will use this one.
Yeah.
Don't you see your screen?
I see my screen.
Ah, okay.
Can you stop sharing so that I can share?
Gabriel, help me to share the screen
Sure.
for in the part of
Sure.
Mwasihawa.
So Seven, can you try clicking share screen again? We have enabled all participants to be able to share screens while someone else is sharing a screen.
Hello, Gabriel?
Yes, are you able to hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, I think Stefan has been able to successfully share his screen.
Hello?
Yes, can you see it? Can you see it?
I'm unable to see the presentation, but I can see your screen.
Yes, now you can continue.
Can you see my presentation now? Hello?
I still can't see your presentation. I can see the file, Teachers Capacity Tanzania Experience, but I cannot see the PowerPoint presentation currently.
Toeni ya kwenu ili waweze kushare UNESCO. Watashare mambo yenu ya
Sorry, maybe if you have opened the file already, if you minimize the current window, it might be under this.
Kwa sababu Mwashiava ameweka screen yake pale, kwa hiyo UNESCO anashindwa kuleta ya kwetu.
Hello?
Yes.
Mwambie Mwashiava stop share.
Ameshashare.
Sisi tumeunganisha huku kwetu, sasa Mwashiava hapa ameweka screen, huyu Gabriel anashindwa. Tunaona hapo screen ya Mwashiava. Mwashiava anatakiwa yeye tushare, tunashare sisi.
Team, maybe we could just
Hello?
begin presenting the experience. Stephen, maybe you can just begin sharing because there seems to be some issue with the PowerPoint, but maybe you could just speak candidly. Technology issues happen all the time, and we understand that sometimes it's out of our hands. But maybe you can just share and just speak about your experience, whatever you wanted to say, even if we can't see your slides. As a teacher, sometimes we have to go with the flow in the classroom if there's a problem with, something. So, many of us have teaching experience. Maybe we could just speak informally and just speak from the heart. Is that okay?
Namwambia Mwashiava atoe ili uweze kumwelezea. Mwashiava toa screen hivi tuweze kupokea.
Now you can start present. You can tell us your experience, Mwashiava.
Okay. Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Here is the experience from Tanzania about how we use local resources to strengthen teachers' capacity. What do we try to? We tried to define a teacher's capacity that be able to look on a number of dimensions. That is abilities, knowledges, and attitudes and skills of the teachers. Attitudes, knowledge, skills, and abilities in terms of content of the lesson or the subject is teaching. Abilities, knowledge, skills, and the attitudes in terms of pedagogical and attitudes, abilities, skills, and the knowledge in terms of ICT, and the same applies to abilities, knowledge, skills, and the attitudes in terms of pedagogical related knowledge. That is the issue of gender responsible pedagogy, the issue of inclusive education pedagogy. All these kind of stuff that the teacher should be capacitated. That is, they have abilities, knowledge, skills, and the attitude in terms of pedagogy, in terms of content, in terms of ICT, in terms of gender responsible pedagogy and inclusive education. Then we have tried also to look at the types of resources we are talking when we say strengthening capacity of teachers in low resource context. We think of the human resource, that insufficient human resource, insufficient financial resource, and a very limited time. So we have a number, some of documents which guide us to strengthen teacher capacity. So these documents put more emphasis on strengthening teachers' capacity. This is, we have Tanzanian Educational Policy 2014, and we have National Framework for Teachers Continuous Professional Development 2020. All these documents put more emphasis on teachers' capacity, and also they put more emphasis on the collaboration of the government with the other government partners. So in strengthening teachers' capacity, with the regard of these documents which put more emphasis, so the government collaborate with partners, the government partners and the other stakeholders to make sure that teachers are participated in their teaching and learning approaches and the content as well. In order to use these low resources we have, so we use these delivery modalities. We have a community of learning at the school level. We have a community of learning at ward or cluster level. We have standard training in which when we prepare a curriculum, teachers are also facilitated to know what is better. Then we have knowledge. From technology here, we have LMS, Learning Management System, which is coordinated by the Tanzania Institute of Education. Then we have e-library, which is also coordinated by the Tanzania Institute of Education. From all these technology issues or e-learning issues, teachers get a number of teaching and learning materials. From community, for example, community of learning at the school, the teachers themselves share ideas and they cooperate and they train each other on the knowledges and the skills which they gain from any changes in our curriculum. We have some examples here, what you've done so far, and this year. We have community of learning. We so far in this year about more than 2,000, more than 200,000 teachers, and our expectation is to reach all teachers with the use of community of learning. Also through learning management system so far, teachers have been able to access our resources more than 46,000 teachers. Also through our e-library, where we have resources, we have books, we have videos, and we have audios which teachers access and use them. So far, we have managed to reach this number. Of course, these are not only teachers, also the number of educational stakeholders, including teachers and the students. So far, we have reached this number, 99,97,297. And the number has been keeping increasing day and day. And through this, we have some experiences, some evidences from different schools and the clusters. Here is one of the schools from which teachers use the community of learning. They have managed to provide the teaching and learning aids with very limited resources, using the available local resources in the environment. We can see also we have teachers here in their communities, sharing the idea, providing teaching and learning aids, using different modules and materials prepared for them. You can see also here we have this school. This is when you can see teachers here are also improvising teaching and learning materials using their available local resources in their environment, in their schools and in their wards. So through this, we have managed to reach a number of teachers with very limited resources, whereby most of them are trained and they have been facilitating each other in their areas, in their schools and their wards with very limited resources. As you can see, they provide teaching and learning materials with their available learning resources. Before I complete it, I would like to welcome Mr. Vincent so that he can also add something, because we have prepared this together. Welcome, Mr. Vincent.
Oh, thank you so much, Steven. I think you have covered everything which you mentioned. That we apologize for the poor network and the connectivity from that end. But in a nutshell, when we talk about the low resource context, means in the area where you don't have enough human resource and there is sufficient funds, and actually when we talk about teachers' ability, teachers' capacity, it has to be linked with the teachers' ability, attitude, and because you may have a very good teacher, trained teachers, but if that teacher does not have compassion and love, and the passion to the professional, to the children it's just teaching, you may not expect it to improve learning practices. So in a nutshell, could just say teachers' attitude, skills, and the ability is very crucial in strengthening teachers' capacity. And unfortunately, what we could see is what will be coming out from students. It is what will give us the picture of whether that teacher have enough capacity or has insufficient capacity. So after being said that, I think I just want to give just probably a clarification. I think the figure which appears in the slide was not the right one, but I think the one which my colleague just read when he was presenting are the one which should be considered in this presentation. Thank you so much, and now over to you, Cosmas. Thank you.
Thank you so much for what you have presented, and now I welcome participants at least to give some comments. Maybe there is one question here, Katabaro. One, could you tell us more about photos on the last slide? This slide, these photos, what do they do, and how are they trained to create teaching and learning materials? Can this support the learning process in low context? Katabaro?
Yes, yeah. If you could see, thank you for the good question, Trustado. Thank you for the very good question. You see, these teachers are now using the local materials available in their context to develop, to improvise teaching and learning materials. So what happens, we train teachers on how to do it. And we ask them now to find the resources available, the local resources available in their locality to develop this teaching learning material. I think we all know that I think teaching learning material is a great tool. It's a great tool if it's used wisely. It's a great tool to innovate or to motivate teaching and learning processes. So I think, so what happens here, teachers receive training, but in each, teachers can have their own time at the school level to sit down and develop these teaching materials together. And then after that, teacher would now go away with those materials and they use those materials in their classroom. I'm not sure if I have answered the question very well, but I'm happy to elaborate if there's any clarification is quite needed. Over to you. There's another question, engagement of parents. You see in this picture here below, you can see there is these people who are carpenter. These are just the carpenter. They've been involved in the teaching learning material, which means now for those material which need to be modernized, teacher, they work with this carpenter, and these are just from the community. So the teacher tell them, I want to have this teaching material of this size, of this shape. And this carpenter are now helping them on how to do that. So it's like a community engagement in the entire process. The picture you see here with the carpenter, these are not teachers. These are just the community members, but who have that skills to develop teaching material using woods and other materials. So I think, yeah, the engagement for community is very crucial, and it really still up the concept of ownership. And this makes sense to know that education is a public domain. It's a public domain, not just for individual people, for specific people. Over to you, Cosmas.
Thank you, Katabaro, because I wanted you to explain, because I know you have been involved too much in this area of innovating, teaching and learning and developing teacher capacities. Of course, we have a number of these initiatives that are being worked through the government and in partnership with the DPOs. And the assumption is that the school is not for one person, it is for the whole community. And therefore there is an element of collaboration that comes in. More questions, if there, we can try to share from other countries as well, so that we continue this discussion. Welcome, Neri. You can share experience. Neri Machu. Oh, Mboya. Mboya, can you explain your comment that you have already given? Hello?
Hello, Cosmas. Sorry, I'm having
Yes.
internet connectivity challenges, so allow me not to put on my video.
Yes.
But
yes.
I was just saying that especially in low resource areas, the engagement of parents is usually very crucial. Sometimes you find teachers who are in a location that they're not even originally from there. So finding even small things for making those materials becomes a problem. And often when you engage parents, you'll realize that the parents will be able to sustain, because it's not just about making. Sometimes you can teach these teachers and they'll make and they put in the classroom, and these materials are destroyed every other day. But if you engage parents and they're able to actually also participate in making these materials, whenever the materials are worn out, then they'll be able to support the process. And that is why I was saying that engagement of parents in this, and even teaching them how to make these materials, is very crucial for continuity.
Yeah.
You, Cosmas.
Thank you, Mboya, for that explanations. And now let us see what we find is that we have learned from the experience from Tanzania that there are a number of issues that have to be looked when we are looking at teacher capacity. And sometimes we have to look at the dimensions of knowledge, skills, and disposition. And sometimes we have to look also at how we collaborate. And almost when we are looking at the teachers, we are trying to look at the dimension about the beliefs that teacher role in the classroom activity and the persona they adopt in the classroom. Why? One area that has to be talked much, I take from Mboya now, is that there is a need to have a serious collaboration with the partners within the society. And that's why we see knowledge, skills, attitude will always come in, because the competencies that are from the school, actually they are there in order to improve the community participation in many of the aspects. And this aspect can be also intrinsic or can be extrinsic. We look at the conceptual, at the lesson planning, at the innovation, at how they guide students and how they assess the teaching and learning. And also the extrinsic one, the quality of leadership. Because even though one can be motivated, and I'm taking from Katabalo that in order to ensure teacher capacity, the community has to be involved. That means quality leadership on how to make sure there is no conflict coming out, so that what is developed can be continued. We need conducive classroom conditions. This cannot be done by the teacher alone. There are other people who are there also. We need to clearly define what are the learning outcomes, the authority, and the effective training, so that at least both the parents and the students enjoy being at a school. On the other aspect, maybe why should education systems in sub-Saharan Africa be concerned with the teacher quality in the implementation of CBC? Many have talked that teachers are the principal interface between competence-based and other solutions that the student learning. We also look at, why do we look in more at teachers? We are saying teacher capacity is a major challenge in implementation of CBC. Why is it a major challenge? Reason is simple, that we still need to have more innovation so that we implement what we are planning to implement, especially when we are implementing the competence-based, which is becoming a contemporary issue. Sometimes even what is it, how do we implement it, has always been a challenge. And looking at different research, they focus at the teacher capacity. We try to find the studies that implementation of CBC in Tanzania have shown that result reveal that pre-service teacher perceive the understanding and ability to implement competence-based, but they reveal that it is difficult in explaining some competence-based curriculum. That means if they don't know the competence-based concepts, it will be difficult to implement. There is another study from Zambia also indicated the same, that revealed that 67% of the teachers of history did not understand the concept of competence-based curriculum or outcome-based. It was also revealed that teachers of history were not using the competence-based. And sometimes even one can ask, how do I set competence-based in subjects like history or any other subject? We are looking at also, when we look at the competence capacity, we find that not only the teachers, we have to develop capacities to all those involved in the education delivery. If we look also at another study, what are the constraints facing successful implementation of CBC in Kenya? We find also the same, that that teaching and learning materials and the unfriendly teaching and learning environment brings more challenges in the implementation. Why? Because not adequate staff, maybe having schools without addressing challenges of understaffing, inadequacy of teaching and learning resources. All this comes in. But we see the experience from Tanzania, where we say, okay, not having resources doesn't mean that we should not teach competence. We find if we use teachers who are well trained on how to prepare resources using their local environment, then that can be solved immediately. And generally, when we are looking at teacher professional development, we say has to be sustained. We see examples from Tanzania. In order to make it sustainable, we had to involve the community members. Why the community members? Because we want them to be part and parcel of the school development. And also there must be collaboration. Which collaboration? We found that there was a collaboration between the teachers and the artisans at the village. And also subject specific. That means each teacher had developed the resources according to what she is teaching. And also, if we want to make it sustained, teachers have to have a buy-in and not just being imposed in order to do something. We look at, therefore, we look at if teacher professional development practices link specific classroom teaching practices, participation incentives, they are there, specific subject focus is there, and the rigorous evaluation is improved, is there and implemented, we expect the learning outcome for the students to be good. And now, if you ask me, according to what I try to see from the findings that I find, I see effective teacher continuous professional development has to have these characteristics. Should be sustainable, should we embed teacher incentives, maybe what happens if the teacher participates. We had one program also in Tanzania which focused on early childhood education, where we had a collaboration between Tanzania Teachers Union and the Education International, where teachers participated in, and the incentive they had was that if they participate fully, they ended up having a diploma. Even this TCPD that we are going now, the community of practice, we say if one completes this successfully, will get a certificate. All these are part of important things that can be taken into account when we are trying to plan for teacher development. And at the same time, teachers must have a buy-in. That is, it's not imposed. It is teachers themselves who decide what to do, and they see what challenges they face, and out of that, then they develop some possible solutions, and where they cannot solve, they ask an intervention. The Tanzania framework for TCPD focuses on those areas where we have teacher needs assessment. That means we don't want the top down, we want the bottom up, where teachers are the one to be involved. We say also there should be some evaluation, and it has some participation incentives. Maybe now let me welcome Muhando, if you have anything. Are you available? Okay. If you are, if not available, then now.
We are.
Let us have a planning discussion so that we can try to discuss these issues after this presentation that we have used. You are welcome, Vincent Katabalo. You have put something there.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I was just saying, I think when we talk about the motivation, I think one of the challenges, if you see, you read from different studies, shows that most of teachers are getting this challenge because they are used to working in isolation. If teachers are expressing some challenges, it becomes the personal problem. For instance, if students cannot manage reading and writing, individual teachers who is indicated is just finger pointed as a problem rather than a collective responsibility. And I was thinking now, when we talk about strengthening teachers' capacity in lower resources, then it should be how can we maximum utilize the resources available. For instance, if in a specific school, you have teachers who have high skills in a specific area, how can we use them? Can we use that teacher to embrace social capital? That how can other teachers benefit from that skill that teachers have, rather than just looking that person as in isolation. So I was thinking if we can try to also address these challenges teachers are experiencing, not in isolation, rather than in collective, that will trigger what we call intrinsic motivation for teachers, because they feel they are part of the community, and whatever happens is not the one who are blamed. The LOGA leaders should feel that they are part of the problem They also have to come up with a possible solution, not just blending. So I'm thinking, when you talk about teachers' capacity, also need to see how can we embrace learning teams to ensure that we develop both human capacity, human capital, and the social capital in teaching workforce. Over to you, Cosmas.
Thank you. Maybe let us get 2 comments before we break into groups and discuss the most important questions that we have that focus basically on how we can make this one important. Now, Gabriel, you can start trying to think about our 3 groups so that we can continue after this, having 2. Maybe anyone from Gambia? Hello? Okay. Anyone to share? Olive? Ruben? Okay. Okay, Christine Wakero, can you share your experience?
Yeah, thanks, Cosmas. Thanks, Cosmas. I just wanted to add in that teachers also appreciate being consulted. When these capacity building activities are going to be shared with the teachers, then teachers need to be asked, what are the gaps that you need to be built on? Because you could assume that teachers are struggling with the pedagogy. Of course, teachers have the pedagogical content. They have, they already have the content. How to translate it could be a challenge, but majority may know how to translate it. So if we identify the exact gap, then we are able to reach the teacher. But if we do not identify the gap, then teachers will not appreciate capacity building, because they imagine that this is, after all, this is what they have been taught again and again from teacher training colleges, from universities. So any model that's going to capacity build teachers must be well thought out, and it must be innovative, and it must make a lot of sense for the teachers to translate, because teachers usually theirs is about, how do I make my students pass? So if how do I make my student pass is what is key, then you must persuade the teacher in a manner that goes along that line. Thank you, Cosmas.
Yeah, thank you so much. Now let me come, Crispin, you raised the hand. You are welcome. Crispin from Zimbabwe. Hello, Crispin. Yes, has removed the hand. Ruben.
Hello, thank you.
Yeah.
In stated area, when there is need for motivation to the teachers who devise this. Otherwise, if they are not recognized, then it's difficult for them to proceed with the innovations. So they have, at least there is need to motivate them so that they can continue to help others to develop the items which can be used mainly in the low resource countries. Thank you. Over.
Yeah, thank you so much. Now we welcome, if we Muhando, if you have anything, while I now send questions to the chat box.
Yes,
Muhando?
yeah, I have something to. Thank you very much. I have something to contribute. You know, if teachers were used to the content-oriented teaching and assessment, when we want them to tend towards CBC, we have to make sure that even the examination boards bring examination questions which are focused on CBC. If there is no correlation between the assessment boards and this shift to paradigm, then there'll be a problem, because teachers are always interested in their children passing exams. And if the examinations are focused on content alone, this would be very difficult. And I think this is what we're trying to shift in Tanzania, from content-based examinations to competence-based examinations, which is not very, very simple. It's a lot of attention. It's something that needs a careful preparation of both teachers and examiners. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Muhando. And now there are questions that I've put in the chat box, and maybe now we have to, I ask now the Gabriel to help us to go into the groups, and each group will respond to all these 3 questions, and the time set for the discussion, because we want to have a fruitful discussion, is 30 minutes, and we hope everyone will participate fully when we are in those group discussions. Gabriel, back to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Dr. Cosmos. I have just opened up the breakout room, so if everyone could kindly join, that would be much appreciated.
Dr. Muhando, Dr. Cosmos, could you please paste the questions? Or Gabriel, you have them?
Yeah, I can paste them. So yeah, I will do that. And I'll also go to each of the breakout rooms and paste it there as well.
Thank you.
Okay, now we are back to the room. You are welcome. What follows now is the presentation from different groups, and I would like to welcome group 1 to share what they found, what they discussed in the group. Each group is given at least 5 minutes. Now group 1.
Okay.
So
Thanks, Cosmas. I will present what we discussed in group 1. And our question number 1 was, what makes a teacher capacity development program in low resource tech context effective? Number 1, we said use what is locally available. We also suggested that you can use resource persons, and a resource person here could be another teacher or any other person from the community. Question 2, we were tasked with the question, who is responsible for strengthening teachers' capacity in our country, and how can they design and implement effective teacher capacity development program? And here we went into different countries, and people shared what happens in their countries. So in Lesotho, for example, they have the NCDC, which is their curriculum in quotes, development institute. So they hold workshops from every time and again with the teachers, and then they train the teachers. Monitoring is done across the country and the teachers, for the teachers who have been trained. But the challenge usually is there may not be enough resources to do this, but they would have wished to do it. So they may not be able to. Tanzania, they have Tanzania Institute of Education. And here, community of learning, teachers are trained through TOT kind of training. So they use the cascading model where they call the teachers to the center, train them, then these teachers go back to school and they hope that they are going to translate the same to the other teachers. So the challenge with this is that it is first, it's expensive to bring the teachers to the training center, and then monitoring again is a challenge. So it's not known whether these teachers, after the training, they train the other teachers, because again, of financial reasons, they may not be able to. So they would wish that these teachers were trained at their own institutions or in schools for that matter. In Kenya, we learned that the Ministry of Education, Kenya, the Kenya has Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development that prepares these resources. The Ministry of Education works very closely with Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development and also with TSC. So a training program is developed by Ministry of Education, but it has to be vetted by curriculum development for it to be trained to the teacher. The challenge with this is that it may take, at times the gap is identified today, and then the training happens maybe 2-3 years later, when now we have a new need. Again, it is a cascading model where teachers are trained, and then it's hoped that the teachers who've been trained are going to train the teachers at the school. So monitoring of this is a challenge. Malawi, I think they also do the same. They have Malawi Institute of Education that comes up with programs, then to the Ministry of Education. In Malawi, the Ministry of Education may not fund trainings at times, and then the program stalls or finances are not released for these particular trainings. So almost the program goes to waste, and therefore it is not implemented. So if funding can be done, then in Malawi, I think they'll have those trainings. In South Sudan, they have a Directorate of Curriculum Development, which is anchored at the Ministry of Education. Assessment is done in class through lesson observation. After lesson observation, they identify the gaps. Then teachers are called upon and trained depending on the gaps that have been identified. Then question 3, how should the program be monitored and evaluated? I think I have mentioned that, but I'll still. So the programs to be monitored and evaluated and to ensure that they are effective. Number 1, monitoring tools should be developed. That's what was discussed, that we need monitoring tools to be developed, and these monitoring tools should not be punitive. Teachers should be talked to that, yes, so this is for your own good. We want you to evaluate yourself, maybe or through the head teacher or whoever it is. And through the monitoring, then a training program can be done depending on the needs that have been identified. So it shouldn't be a fault-finding mission. The other one is funding should not be politicized. So that we get enough funding, and curriculum centers after training, they should be able to go and visit the teachers at their schools to find out if what they're being trained on is actually being implemented at the school. There is also need for summative evaluation at the end of it all. So there was also suggestion that there needs to be a training. Before the training, there needs to be a baseline evaluation where we get to know where are the students at this point, then train the teachers, then again do an end-line evaluation so that you get to know if the training was impactful or not. Needs of the teachers should be addressed. Teachers in the rural areas should be designed programs that address their needs, and teachers in the urban areas should also, so that you don't just lump these teachers together when every teacher's need is different depending on the geographical place they are, or okay. Then another one is that feedback should be immediate. It shouldn't take a long time. You have trained the teachers today, and then you have monitored and evaluated them. Do we call them and share with them what has happened after the training and what you're observing? So going to the office and writing those reports, again, may not help. They need immediate feedback. And last one is, after the teachers' training, it is important that we go back to the schools to find if they're experiencing any challenges, and if there are any challenges, they need to be supported, so that we don't just call teachers, train them, send them back to school without that frequent checking on them and finding out if indeed what they have been trained on is happening at the school. Thank you, Cosmas. That was group 1.
Thank you so much. Group 1, you have done a lot that we needed to do much, especially what makes a teacher capacity development program effective. You found human resource, financial, in the context through which the teacher development is to be done. That is good. In terms of who we find, in most cases, we are looking at those who have been given responsibility to develop curriculum are the ones given also the responsibility to do the teacher training. And let us hear from group number 2.
Thank you, Cosmas. On behalf of group number 2, well, I think there's a similarities from what came out from what's coming out from group number 1, and it really shows that we are one continent. For instance, question number 1: what makes teachers' capacity development? What makes teachers' capacity development program? My colleagues from Kenya mentioned about teachers has to be motivated, and I think we can now consider the intrinsic motivator and the extrinsic motivator. There's also a concern from Kenya, also alternative resources, especially by engaging in our community and make them their main actor in helping teachers in developing teachers' capacity, especially in low resource context. Another point came out from Tanzania was we also need to prioritize teachers' needs and then address those needs, which we think if those needs are addressed, are going to reach many teachers, are going to give us a huge impact. But we have confidence that we can do that, but also we're going to use the minimum efforts in achieving that or in implementing that. So I think the issue of prioritization is also key because of the shortage of resources. On question number 2, well, I think there was also similarities from what has been presented by group number 1, and also the same experience across countries is almost the same. the key role, the custodian of curriculum development and the implementation is also responsible for strengthening teachers' capacity. And some mention about the Ministry of Education. In Lesotho, they mentioned that. In Tanzania, they mentioned about the curriculum TIE, Tanzania Institute of Education, but also experience from Somalia, they mentioned about the ministry and its agencies. From Kenya, they mentioned about the school inspector, in-service training department, university, teachers college, and even district education leaders. I think they also have that responsibility. But there was another exceptional contribution that even teachers themselves are also responsible to develop their own capacity. And I think this is very powerful. Anything which comes from within, it motivates you to do better, rather than if those who are just relying from external. And from question number 3, how should the program be monitored and evaluated? Yes, I think there's also similar from Somalia. First of all, active engagement and the participation across different actors. From Lesotho, education inspectors. Tanzania, quality assurer has to be strengthened to take their role effectively. But also we mention, from Tanzania also mentioned about this monitoring should be data driven. At the same time, should also allow feedback mechanism and the learning, and then how this learning can be used to come up with improvement plan. So in nutshell, it should be an improvement plan. It should be data driven. Now over to you, Cosmos. Over.
Thank you. Now we are still getting more feedback that teacher has to be the center. I remember when I was doing my PhD, to teachers, when they are given a chance to practice, to try to solve their own challenges, it becomes easier for them because they are already in their context, and they are dealing with something that they face always. Now let us hear from group number 3. You are welcome. And where possible, maybe those that you have corrected, you can write shortly and share them through the WhatsApp or through the chat box, so that others can also continue sharing. And this discussion can continue, will not end only during this session. You are welcome, group number 3.
Yeah, good afternoon from my side here, Sierra Leone. Yeah, in our group, I think there are a lot of similarities, but one of the things that what makes teacher capacity development programs resource context effective, one of the things we try to identify is that we make a clear training needs. The training needs to be very clear to both the teachers and even those involved in them. So there should be a clear line of demarcation, and this is what are the competencies we expect from them. And also we also make it that it should be used, it can be community ownership, shall be a community ownership in those things, so that after the training, they will not say, no, let the bodies, they can able to take responsibilities and take ownership on those trainings, on those development they have received. And that's one also we discussed, and many other things that others speakers have said. I think I don't want to go, and so we are all in line on those ones they have mentioned. Because we use more of Sierra Leone experience. Here we have the Teaching Service Commission, and in that commission, there is a particular department for professional development, and that works with the curriculum department, which is settled, which is nested in the Ministry of Education. So there is a there's a plan. In fact, there is a policy from Teaching Service Commission wherein teachers can be developed be it untrained and unqualified teachers, those still teaching the classroom, that are in the classroom, and even those in-service programs for the teachers already inside and pre-service teaching and in-service training. And also they have program, they have got that for since 2023. So all those who are in the classroom, being in the payroll, they are a program for them, so that by within the next 5 years, they will have completed and they have achieved some kind of competencies. And how can they decide implement this teacher capacity development? You know, also we talk about stakeholders involvement, also stakeholder involvement, and the teachers themselves are stakeholders. They are very key. In fact, things should not be coming from the bottom, the top, but even themselves, they can design their programs. You know, they can design which kind of training they need, what they need and what for, and in fact, total involvement of them. So we, with other many things that others have said, I think also is very, very key, as I said. And how should the program be monitored? And as I said from the starting, you should have an engagement, community engagement, and there should be collaboration and an ownership. And if this is done, I think that will help. In fact, for us, those teachers in the classroom, because just after the war, there are a lot of need for, do not have a requisite qualification. And so when the TSC came about recently, and they asked them to bring some in-service training for them, and that is why during the holidays, there are those distant learning, wherein the teachers can go, they are being enrolled, they are being sponsored by NGOs or government. That will be done for 3 years. So after they have completed that course, they will take an exams, and from there they will be given certificates. But during this time, they also will be sent to schools to do some teaching practice. And in that process, they can be monitored, they can be supervised by a senior experienced person, teacher, to see. And even they will be assigned as assistant teachers as far they are on these programs. And also, there is a policy also that look the kind of the needs of rural teachers and how they can able to complete that kind of programs. So for us in Sierra Leone, because most of the argument, most of the discussions were coming from Sierra Leone, and that is what really we were able to really identify in answering this question. Back to you, Dr. Cosmas.
Thank you so much. From all the presenters, we find that actually what makes a teacher capacity development program to be effective, we see mostly that they should come from the teacher. Now, teacher buy-in is important, and that when the teachers are doing the buy-in, they have to be supported and not to be punished. And when they show a need, that need should not be used to punish. Who is responsible? I find almost many are talking about those who are preparing curriculum are the ones who do the monitor, the capacity development for teachers. And this is important. How can they design and implement? Teachers has to be the source of those needs, so that teacher needs assessment for many of the development program. Monitoring feedback should be immediately, not waiting. That I take it to be a very important aspect, and you have discovered a very important one, because if you monitor and you have some findings and then you wait, the example from Kenya is interesting, that you can take too long until even the problem, even the needs has changed. Now we find, these are some of the things that we find, that teacher professional development programs that focus on arming teachers with subject-specific pedagogy are thus likely to make the largest contributions to student learning. And all the discussions that we discussed we try to see they are focusing on how to arm the teachers with the skills that they will use in order to facilitate learning in schools. Also, there are some researchers, they say well-designed professional learning helps teachers master content, own teaching skills, evaluate their own and their students' performance, and address changes needed in the teaching and learning. We find that even when we are talking about monitoring and evaluation, this monitoring should not only come from outside. The monitoring can also come within the teachers themselves. Now, let us look at this last slide. To me, that a new deal for teachers. This was coming from Education International. They say, okay, how do we implement a new deal? Because this new deal, we find from our discussions, is like you are focusing at increasing investment in quality public education systems, guarantee labor rights conditions. We have also talked that even if teachers, we want them to improve the environment, the working environment has to be improved. Also, we are talking about investing in quality teacher training and professional development. We have discussed, and this we make the program more effective. We are trying, there is an issue of trusted teachers and their pedagogical expertise. This is where now we are trying to look at the collaboration with the teachers themselves and those who are meant to do the summative evaluation on whether they might be teachers-based. And also, what is important is involving teacher union in policy through social dialogue. This is also is coming very seriously added today. Otherwise, I thank you so much. And this slide shared, we can try to continue responding. How do we implement a new deal for teachers in our countries? Now, back to Marian and the team. So for other logistical issues in our side, I thank you for collaboration. Thank you so much for participating in this session. Welcome, Mariam or Gabriel.
Sure, wonderful. Thanks so much, Dr. Cosmos. And so as we conclude today's session, I would like to invite participants to fill out and respond to the survey that Udasa has kindly left on the chat. We would really like to hear from you so we can make improvements to our next session. And so we would like to share appreciation to the TIA team for leading and organizing today's session. And we'd also especially like to thank those who joined us today and contributed to today's rich discussions. Today we heard a variety of approaches to strengthen teachers' capacities in low-resource contexts, such as utilizing local environments and communities, engaging with parents, and prioritizing teacher needs to help solve their own challenges. Otherwise, thank you again for your engagement today, and we look forward to seeing you again in our final session of this community of practice, which will be focusing on implementing competency-based curriculum and approaches in teacher preparation, education, and professional development. That's it from our end, and I hope you have a great rest of your day, unless anyone else from my team would like to share anything. Wonderful. Thank you all so much, and hope you have a great rest of your day.